My name is Andrew Bodewes. I am a contractual lobbyist for the Illinois Retired Teachers Association. What that means is I work for the association as well as some other folks, and I'm at the Capitol whenever they're in session. I testify on behalf of the association, track legislation on behalf of the association, and also try and build our relationship with legislators, senators, and all of the multitude of staff, both for the General Assembly, the agencies, the governor's office. And really it's all coming together to try and do is provide legislators and legislation that's informed, that's helpful to retired teachers and the members of our association, and that the other big piece, of course, is fighting back against negative legislation, uninformed legislation that's harmful to our members. I grew up, born and raised in the Springfield area. I went to school here in Springfield. From there, moved out to Colorado to do my undergraduate degree. Moved back to Illinois because I had an opportunity to work for the Illinois House Democratic Caucus. I worked for them for a couple of years, 4 years. From there, I was hired by the Illinois Teachers Retirement System as the Director of Governmental Affairs. Worked with the Illinois Teachers Retirement System for a couple of years in that role, and then started my own business with another individual, and through that business started to work for the Retired Teachers Association. So what lobbying means in layman's terms, first of all, I'll just go back first to the actual definition. Lobbying means to ask a public official to do something for yourself or for others in their official capacity. The simplest example of this might be asking a legislator to vote no on legislation that would eliminate pension benefits. Or asking a governor's office staff person to provide information to the governor on how pensions work and how retired teachers receive an annuity. I think the funniest misconception about lobbying, I think sometimes people have views or images of it, that it's this fun, great, going out and whining and dining. It's about 95% data entry, especially what we do here at the Illinois Retired Teachers Association. We deal with complex subject matters. So there's a huge amount of education that goes into everything we do. Again, whether we're trying to pass legislation or if we're advocating to kill legislation. Because of that, little bit more complicated than maybe an issue that all folks are familiar with, like buying a house. Most people can relate to buying a house, but most lawmakers can't necessarily relate to pensions or to retiree health care and the economics and the sort of the social funding of that. So just a lot of education and a certain amount of screaming and yelling. So the interesting thing is that the Illinois Retired Teachers Association isn't partisan. And the Illinois Retired Teachers Association is, it's many things. It is an advocacy organization, it is a member benefit organization, but it is a political organization as well. And what that means is there's a political action committee, and we carry out an endorsement process where we endorse some legislative candidates and other statewide candidates. Historically, if you run, and I think we're last time I looked, we had endorsed, I think, about 52% Democrat, 48% Republican. So always trying to stay 50-50, but just happened to be the last time we went 2% over. The same is true if you look at the funding of it. Candidates that we're supporting, that money is split not just Democrat and Republican, it's split downstate in the northern part of the state, east to west. It's geographically diverse. It is a caucus diverse between the Senate and the House of Representatives. So there's a lot of balance and a lot of diversity across all of that. I think there's probably a couple reasons for that. One, we get to be focused. We're not an organization that has to worry about 800 items of legislation. We're focused on healthcare for our retirees. We're focused on pension benefits for our retirees. We're focused on the funding that makes those things possible, and quality administration, and ease of access, and ease of use. That's where we interact with state government. So because we're focused, we don't have to care about if we don't have to care about the way they vote on guns or the way they vote on the environment. We really get to focus in, and that means that there are legislators, lawmakers from every walk of life that support us in what we do. When we make an endorsement on a legislator, it's based solely on retirees. And the criteria that ultimately get used, we use a questionnaire system. This is just a nice direct way for us to ask the questions about how a legislator feels about issues that impact retirees. For instance, do they support pensions? Do they support funding for pensions? Retiree healthcare? Those types of questions. So that's the foundation where the endorsement process starts. We also work with the locals. We work with the retired teachers that are in that area to understand, is this person responsive if you have a question? Do they come to the local meetings when invited? Do they try and engage? So that local relationship is really important as well. And then the other thing that we will look at, obviously, is voting record and the public statements that candidates, for an incumbent, really the voting record, for a candidate that's running for a new office, maybe what they did in the previous office or public statements that they've made. We try and dig down and see, is this person really being a person of honesty and integrity when they're saying that they want to support Retired Teachers Association? Absolutely. So it's always better to be proactive, and it's better for a couple of reasons. One, it's easier. And I'm a proponent of taking the easiest path to victory that I can take. And so the easiest way is to grab a legislator, especially if they're new. There's a lot of freshman legislators now that are still serving in their first 2 terms, and just educate them, inform them. What we often forget, because we're so focused on our issues and we know so much about our issues, we forget that doesn't mean that senator knows what it's like to be retired or what it's like to live on a pension or how important that health care is. They don't have any context, so we have to provide context. That's the cheapest and easiest way to get what we want, is to inform folks. Don't make bad decisions. Don't come up with bad ideas, because this is how what you want to do impacts all of us. So, and as I mentioned, cost is a big important part of it too. If lawsuits are incredibly expensive, and if we tried to legislate every issue that we face, we wouldn't be able to do it. So we always try and catch it in. There's many steps in the process, but we try and get engaged as early in the process as we can. Grab legislators when they're young, when they're just coming in. Take that time to educate them, and we find that we get really great, consistent results from taking that approach. So a year in the lobbying process, in some respects, sometimes I feel like lobbying has similarities with agriculture. You follow a schedule that you don't determine. It is a predetermined schedule, and you base everything about key important times in that schedule. So the General Assembly every year comes in right at the beginning of the year, right in January. January is usually a light month, and it is a lot of paperwork process. These are long days in the office, not as often at the Capitol, where we're reviewing all the legislation that's being introduced. In any given period, in any given year, there's as many as 7,000 items of legislation filed. First thing we do, we read every single one of those bills to make sure that nobody's being harmed, that we're identifying areas where people are being helped. So that's sort of January. February is still that time period. And then by the middle of February, introduction deadline happens. In this particular case, it'll be on February 14th. It changes a little bit year to year. That means all the bills have to be filed, and we can stop worrying, because now we know the corpus of what we're dealing with. As we go into March and April, that's really what I call the committee season. Certainly March is very much the committee season. This is where bills are going to committee. Committees can last, in some cases, 6-7 hours long. There are committees that we tend to not have bills of interest in, but there are committees where we often have bills of interest in. For instance, there's a pensions committee in both the House and Senate, and we're always at them. So that's kind of March. Early April is really that committee time, and those are long days of sitting at the Capitol, listening to things that you'd rather not be listening to, waiting for your bill to get called, waiting for the issue to come up, but a lot of hurry up and wait during that time. So we get into the end of April and into May, two things are starting to happen. One, those bills are now going to the floor and being passed, where they're going over to the chamber opposite of origin. So if they started in the House of Representatives, they're going over to the Senate, or vice versa. During that time, it's a lot of running around. There's a lot of meeting with legislators, giving them information, making sure that sort of all of your ducks are in a row for the bills that you're trying to pass, making sure that they're meeting the parliamentary deadlines, for the bills that you're trying to kill, trying to make sure that they're not meeting the parliamentary deadlines, maybe working towards trying to get an amendment. This is also a time where amendments are happening. Any bill can be amended at any time during this phase. Sometimes amendments are very nominal, very minor, a technical change. Sometimes they rewrite the entire legislation. The other thing that's going on is budget, and that's a big issue for the Retired Teachers Association. The largest single line item in the budget is the funding for the teachers' retirement system. As the largest single line item, it's always going to be discussed about, and there's always going to be folks that don't want to put the money in there. We advocate, the Illinois Retired Teachers Association advocates for the funding for that line. We also advocate for funding for healthcare, and we also look to make sure, because things that seem silly, like making sure CMS has got enough budget in its benefit department, well, that means that there's people to answer the calls when members call, and have questions about their healthcare. So we take a global look at that. End of May 31st, they adjourn. June is usually a lot where we're doing a lot of member communication. We're maybe coming out into the locals, or putting things on the website, or putting information out just to catch everybody up. And then July is our quietest month legislative. During April and May, it's often 100-hour weeks, so we take a little bit of well-deserved rest in July, typically. And then August, September, October, we start going through our strategy sessions so that we're ready for that next January. And also veto session happens typically right around Thanksgiving, oftentimes the week before and the week after. Sometimes quiet, sometimes busy, it depends a little bit. And then December tends to be our sort of second quietest month after July, where everybody's taking a breath and relaxing a little bit before it all starts over again. So legislation, it doesn't always follow the path that we were talking about. Legislation often has can come as an amendment in the most surprising of ways. The Illinois Supreme Court has said, quote unquote, single subject. So a bill has to follow a single subject. And what that means is that a bill has to be introduced in the same broad subject matter that any amendments come onto it. But that's kind of silly because, for instance, the subject could be state government. Well, are they involved with state government? They are. Therefore, that would be germane. What happens then, in order to get around parliamentary processes and time requirements, they create what are sometimes called shell bills or vehicle bills. These are bills that make a nominal change in statute, typically in very broad subject areas like state government. And the change that is being proposed in that bill is not the change the sponsor ultimately wants. He wants to add an amendment, she wants to add an amendment and make the change. She's just not ready to do it yet. So that can come out, has to be filed for an hour before it can be voted on. So by using a shell or a vehicle bill, you can end run all of the timing and posting requirements. Perfect examples of this. Tier 2 was the bill, the language, which it was about 485 pages, was available for 1 hour before it was voted on into law. Senate Bill 1 was a very similar experience. Senate Bill 1 was, of course, the legislation that unconstitutionally took benefits away from retired and active teachers, that we were very involved in that lawsuit that reversed. So yes, especially on the really bad stuff, because the reason that a lawmaker goes that path is they don't want these issues in the light of day. They're intentionally trying to be sneaky. It's important for this organization to have as many members as possible. And I'll actually add to that, it's also important for this organization to have as active members as possible. I had a great conversation with a legislative leader in the House one time that really informed me and made me sort of kind of almost change the way I see the world. I was talking to him about how a bill that he was introducing to eliminate health care for retired teachers was a very bad bill. And I was involved in a very long conversation with him, and I was begging and pleading with him that it was a terrible bill. And he said something very interesting to me. He said, well, it can't be that bad. And I said, well, what do you mean it can't be that bad? And he said, well, I filed it 2 months ago, and I haven't had one retired teacher call me or write me or ask me anything. He said, so if it was really bad, somebody other than just you would be talking to me. Well, I can promise you that after that conversation, that changed. But he had made a valid point. If it was such a bad bill, if it was so terrible, how come nobody else had come and talked to him? I'm obviously not of retirement age. And so what we do, it's important to be able to say, look, the more members we have, the stronger the voice. If it's 38,000 members, that's a strong voice. But 45,000 members is a stronger voice. And what we're saying, by having those numbers and by being engaged, we're informing the General Assembly that we care about our pensions, we care about our health care, we care about our quality and our experience when we interact with state government, that we think what we've done is important and that we think what we continue to do is important. That's what we're telling that legislator. If we're not engaged, and obviously the lowest level of engagement is not being a member, we're really telling the General Assembly and our legislators that we don't care if they change our pension. We don't care if they take our health care away. And it is interpreted that way. I mean, and again, that example with that particular representative, I mean, that's how he was interpreting that. So, no, I love being here. I love being part of an organization like the Illinois Retired Teachers Association that has grown so much, and I've been here long enough that I've got to be here and watch that growth happen. I mean, we have, we talked a little bit about what we're doing politically. When we started, we were doing very little. Now we're competing with large organizations. And when we started, we used to have to call everybody, oh, please fill out the questionnaire, please fill out the questionnaire. Now I get calls from representatives and senators, call me the minute the questionnaire comes out. I don't want to miss that. It's very important to me. I've got folks saying, what do I need to do to be a better friend with the Retired Teachers Association? Because of what we're doing in part on the political and because we have such a quality program there, we've made it very easy for the representatives and senators to interact with it. We've taken down obstacles so they like interacting with us. They like our process. And we've done very good about, whether it's financial or whether it's just informing our members in the local area and helping them with their messaging and supporting them and what they're trying to do. And that's been just something, again, that we've just had so much growth. I think why this organization has had growth, again, on the political side, on the legislative side, and again, I mean, we were the folks that, in Senate Bill 1, we were the folks, it's Heaton versus the state of Illinois. It's our member that was that sued the state and kept them from reducing pensions. One of the biggest lawsuits in the last 20 years, and we were at the heart of that, and we chose to be there, and the membership engaged so beautifully, and so now folks think twice. But when we say, well, we can always sue, they think twice about that because they know we can't. We do what we say we're going to do, and we say what we're going to, we say what we are going to do. We're honest. We approach the system with integrity. But I think the reason why, other than you've got a great staff here, you've got a great board, those are all good things. But we've created a two-way communication street where the members are informing us. The last 3 bills that we passed as an organization, legislation that we've now passed into law, have come from a member calling and telling us their issue, and us doing the research and finding out that it was something that affected a lot of folks, and going to the legislature and passing bills that directly impacted the pocketbooks of the membership. But again, we don't go out there and dream up a bunch of ideas that we think would be cute to file in legislation. We listen to the membership, we hear from them, again, whether they're on the board, whether they're a brand new member, whether a lifetime member, regardless, we gather all that information. And so we're not doing something, I don't do something for anybody. I'm part of a process that empowers all of our members to do something for themselves. And I think that foundational approach has led to incredible amounts of victories. We haven't had a bad bill passed in years, and we've been consistently passing positive legislation. And this year's not going to be any different. We're going to continue to pass positive legislation. So, and again, it's because of our members that we do that. It's not because of me. It's not because of any staff people here. It's because retired teachers who are engaged and active.
The IRTA, join today. Protect your pension and health benefits the easy way. Visit IRTA online.